Kaylee.
I can't at this moment because Ray is doing something, but as soon as I have access, I'll make you guys co-host.
No worries. Thank you.
And Miss Lisa, everyone now is in the meeting. I think we're only missing Ev, but she did mention she was gonna join at 6. I mean at 5:30.
Got it. And can you do me a favor, Valeria? Can you get message out to our parents, the ones that usually participate, just so then they know it's a Bitly SAUSD budget one? Thank you.
Yes.
I'll text the ones that I know. And who is our translator today?
It's me.
It's the interpreter
Got it.
on Zoom.
When you guys see my screen, are you seeing the notes like Jeremy Cogan just enter the waiting room?
Yes, you'll see. Yes, you will. Josefina Mejia,
So you
food
that's gonna
services.
so that's gonna be disruptive. How in the world do I?
We could take. Oh, it'd be hard because we'd have to take co-host duties away from you.
You can just minimize it, Ron.
I X'd out the last one. So let's see the next person who joins. Let's see if I'm getting it.
Josie, do you know a parent just asked me if parents was going out about tonight's budget town hall?
We shared it through our social media channels. I don't think we did a direct parent square. Would you like me to send one out real quick?
Ron, what do you think?
I think it's too late to
Okay.
do a parent square right now.
Okay, yeah.
Come
You guys,
across
just the people who already had my face liaisons, if you had parents that you connected with, that's who I shared with. It's the regular kind of parents who always participate. We may get a small turnout.
We did share the link as well on Monday with all parents so in our ePlus newsletter as well.
Okay, and we've let everybody in already. Let me see. Yep. Welcome everyone to our budget town hall. We're going to be starting, just give us 1 or 2 more minutes. We just want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to log in. We know that we had to redirect some people to a different Zoom, but thank you guys for being here with us. Gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros. Si pueden esperar 1 o 2 minutos hasta que se conecte un poquita más gente. Estamos esperando 2 minutos más antes de empezar. Gracias. Hello, everyone. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Ya vamos a empezar con la junta. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our budget town hall. Today, we're going to be going over the second interim budget report, 2025-26. And we want to thank everybody for being here with us today. Gracias a todos por estar con nosotros hoy para esta junta sobre el presupuesto del Distrito de Santa Ana. Estamos presentando la información de este tiempo del año, que es la segunda reporte que tenemos del año. Para que sepan, tenemos interpretación. Lo vamos a tener en español, inglés y vietnamita. Si quieren interpretación, pueden tocar en el mundo que está abajo de la página. Así pueden escoger el idioma que ustedes quieran y también mudar audio original para que no tengan que escuchar los dos idiomas a la misma vez. If you need interpretation for today, we are going to have it available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So please make sure the presentation is going to be in English. If you need Spanish or Vietnamese translation, please click on the little world, click on Spanish, Vietnamese, and mute original audio. On your phone, you click on the three little dots, and then you also click on interpretation, which is the little world when you see that. And then you would click on Spanish or Vietnamese. And please, once again, remember to click mute original audio so you don't hear two voices. En el teléfono van a tocar en los tres puntitos que están abajo de su teléfono. Después tocan donde dice interpretación y hay un mundo. Escogen el idioma que ustedes quieran en español o en vietnamita para el idioma que quieran y mudar el audio original. Y al ratito vamos a estar trabajando en grupos y les vamos a dar poquita más información cuando lleguemos a ese punto. We also want to let everyone know that a little later we are going to be working in small groups. We want to welcome everyone and thank you for being here. We value your insight and your input. We are going to be going over our community norms and our participation guidelines. We're going to be sharing the interim budget report. And then right after that, we're going to get into our breakout groups where we have facilitators that will be guiding you through a question and we'll be logging all of your responses. Then we'll be coming back into the greater group once again at the end of that. And your facilitator will share out one or two of your ideas. Our community norms for today, we want to make sure that we're listening to understand, that we lead with care, making sure that we assume that we all have positive intent. We're centered on our students, families, and our community. We want to make sure that everyone does stay focused throughout the presentation. Next slide. And then we also want to make sure that we're mindful of the time. So we want to give an opportunity to everyone who's in our small groups to be able to share out when we share out. And we want to make sure that we share the space so that everybody does have an opportunity to participate with us today. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ron Hacker, who will begin our budget presentation.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. And I'm actually going to turn it right over to Jennifer Cisneros, who's going to go over the first few slides, and I'll be back in a few slides to give some background information on certain aspects of the budget related to both revenue and expenditures. Jennifer?
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. As you can see, we're going to start here with our budget timeline and just sharing with folks that we are always operating in 2 fiscal years. You can see that top half of the slide, we are operating in current year budget 25-26. And the bottom, you can see some of the benchmarks as we start to think about 26-27 budget year and planning. Right now, you could see circled there in green is second interim, and this is essentially a snapshot of our current financial position. So we use the most up-to-date revenue expenditure data to project where we believe the district will end the year financially. So for all of our interims, both first and second, there are 3 possible certifications. You can see here positive certification, meaning the district will meet all financial obligations. There is a qualified certification, which means the district may not meet its financial obligations in the current year or the 2 out years. And then there's a negative certification where the district would be unable to meet its financial obligations. And I'm happy to share that we will be submitting to OCDE a second interim report with a positive certification. So we're going to take a quick look at our ending fund balance. And I always like to think of this as like how much money we have in the bank at the end of the year. You can see in 24-25, the district started the new fiscal year with a $216.6 million ending fund balance. As we start to look in at 25-26 and what our projection is, we are deficit spending by about $59 million, and that puts our projected ending fund balance at $157.7 million. And it's important to understand that not all of the district's ending fund balance works the same. A portion of these funds are restricted, meaning that the state or the federal government has already determined how that money must be spent. So those dollars are typically dedicated to very specific programs, and they can't be used for other purposes, even if the district has other needs. So and looking at this chart, you can see that there's a blue portion there that is going to represent our unrestricted funds. So unrestricted means this is the greatest flexibility we have as an organization, and it can help us. We rely on this to manage our operations, rising, if we need to respond to rising cost. And then the red portion really represents the district's restricted funds, which are, as I mentioned, are committed to very specific programs. If you're familiar with Title I, that would be considered a restricted fund source, or ELOP, which is for our after-school programs. Okay, next slide. So looking at some of the assumptions we build into our local control funding formula, also known as LCFF. This is, you're going to see some assumptions starting with our COLA, which is the cost of living adjustment, is at 2.3%, and you'll see a slight increase over the 2 out years to 2.41% and then 3.06%. Some additional assumptions that we look at are our enrollment in ADA, and you can see here that we see significant decreases in the 2 out years, starting 25-26 at about 33,000 for enrollment, and in 27-28 we dip below 30,000 at just about 29,500 students. For UPP, our unduplicated pupil percentage, we are looking at 93.05% for a current year in 25-26, and then slight incremental increases in the 2 out years. I'm going to turn it over to Ron to share a little bit more about COLA and some of our other assumptions. Ron, you're muted.
See, I tried to be polite. Thank you for telling me. So before we get off the slide, I do want to talk a little bit about our unduplicated pupil percentage. So you see we are at 93.05% this year. That we missed our target. Our budget assumption earlier in the year was that we would be at 94%, but we missed that despite some really great efforts to try and increase that percentage. One of the issues, we just can't ignore this, is that when we're trying to maximize that percentage, we're relying on communication with families regarding the household income application that they submit, and we're asking questions like, do you have you incorporated everyone who's in the household? Is the grandfather listed? Is the uncle listed? And given certain political situations right now with immigration enforcement, we found that some people were just not as willing to answer those questions, and that definitely hurt our ability to get our unduplicated pupil percentage as high as we would have liked. But moving forward, we have restored that 94% as the assumption for next year, and then 95% the year after that. And we do have some strategies in place to realize those numbers. So I want to talk a little bit about COLA, and specifically the relationship between COLA and Prop 98. So COLA, of course, is cost of living adjustment, and this is based on formulas, and it's just formulas that the federal government calculates based on what they're seeing state and local governments facing. So what the average increase is for state and local governments across the nation, that is what determines what Santa Ana Unified's COLA is going to be going, into the next few years. As you could imagine, those numbers aren't necessarily accurate because what budget pressures we may be facing here in Santa Ana, the rest of the country may not be facing. What's important to point out here is that what we receive in terms of adjustments year over year doesn't have as much to do with COLA as it has to do with the state economy. And that's where the Prop 98 guarantees come from. So people think that Prop 98 is just that we get 40% of the state budget. And that's not really completely accurate. There are various factors which also take into account what the economy is in the state, whether the economy is growing, whether the economy is shrinking. They're also taking into account whether or not ADA is increasing. So what's important to point out here is that the state economy is heavily dependent upon what we call the big three: corporate tax, sales tax, and personal income tax, with personal income tax representing about 2/3 of what the state takes in. Of the personal income tax, about 1/6 of that is reliant upon capital gains tax. And capital gains is basically largely dependent on how the stock market is doing. So if the stock market is doing well, that means personal income tax is going to be up. It means the state economy is going to be better, and it means that Santa Ana Unified is going to receive more money. But if the stock market is not doing well, then the opposite happens, and Santa Ana may not be receiving a lot of money. So the most important thing to take into consideration here is the relationship between COLA and Prop 98. So if those federal formulas are projecting a low COLA, but the state economy is really strong, then we're going to see some one-time money. And that's what's happened a lot over the last few years, is the COLA percentages are super low, but the economy is strong. The state knows that they have to make us whole. And the way they do that is with one-time money or block grants. So that is why over the past few years, you've seen relatively low COLA rates, 2%, 3%, but we've seen block grants every single year. That is what's at play here. I also want to talk a little bit about enrollment. So, of course, enrollment is declining quite a bit in Santa Ana. We actually have higher than average declines in enrollment versus other school districts. So these are the numbers, and we've shown these quite a few times. What's important to point out here is that the decline is actually getting more severe. So going back a few years, 2016, 17, right around there, the average decline was about 3% a year. Then going back to 21, 22, the decline increased to be about 5% every year. And for the current year and through the 2 years of the multi-year projection, the average decline is actually 6%. That is obviously very significant. Our revenue is dependent upon ADA and enrollment. And when we see these declines, we know that in enrollment, we know that our revenue is going to go down. Before Jennifer jumps back in with talking about the actual revenue numbers, I do want to point out that we don't get paid only on enrollment. Of course, it is ADA, it's students in seats, and there's a relationship between students in seats and enrollment. We call that the ADA factor, and that's dependent upon how many students actually attend, as well as how many students we may be losing during the course of the year. That combination of student attendance and attrition, how many students we lose, is what determines our ADA factor, which right now is about 93%. So of enrollment, we're only recognizing about 93% in terms of ADA, which produces our revenue.
Okay, so talking about revenue, we are going to jump into what our projections are for second interim for the 25-26 school year. But I do want to orient folks to this slide. You'll see similar slides when we get into expenditures, but what you'll see here on the left is the funding source in that first column. We did add our unaudited actuals from 24-25, so that's essentially where we ended with regards to revenue last school year. We won't touch too much on that. We're really going to be looking at the next two columns in the middle, the 25-26 first interim numbers. Those were the projections that we had at first interim, which we presented back in December. And then we have updated numbers for second interim, which you'll see in that column. And you'll I'll be referencing that red arrow that you see there. So comparing first interim to second, and then you can see that column with the red is really showing you the percentage in terms of a variance, like what's the difference between what we reported at first and what we're reporting at second. So starting with LCFF revenue source, you can see that we have very little change from first to second interim. When you look at federal revenue, there is a slight decrease in what we projected. First interim, we were looking at 41.7 million, and now we're at about 38.4 million, which is an 8.1% variance. And a lot of that's primarily due to our Title I funds. At second interim, we updated the estimates based on final award notifications. We revised carryover from 24-25, and so that's what we're seeing happening there. There's very little change in our other state revenue from first to second interim, but you do see a pretty significant increase for other local revenue, about a $12.4 million increase from first to second interim. And that change is primarily related to Medi-Cal reimbursements. We know that we're going to get Medi-Cal reimbursements, but it's very unpredictable in terms of when those payments come in. And so we only recognize that revenue once we've received it in-house. And looking at the next slide, here we're looking at the revenue over the multi-year. So just again, to orient folks to the slide, if you've never seen this before, on the left side, you're going to see the actuals in prior years. So those are the numbers that we hit or that came in. And then on the right side of that red line are going to be the projections for current year and then our two out years. So 26-27 and 27-28. And that blue portion represents the LCFF funding, which is the district's primary funding source and is largely driven by student enrollment. As you look at the two out years on the right, you'll notice a slight decline in the LCFF revenue. That's primarily due to what we shared with the assumption slide. We're seeing a decline in enrollment and the impacts of what we refer to as a negative effective COLA. With regards to federal funding, which is that purple band, you see a slight decrease and then pretty stable in the two out years. It's stabilizing. And the green portion, which represents our state funding, you'll see a slight decrease, or actually not a slight decrease, a pretty significant decrease from 25-26 into 26-27. And that's really due to some of our block grants that will be expiring at the end of this year. Now, one thing I will call out with this particular revenue source is that the governor has proposed additional funding that may replace some of those block grants. So we do anticipate that number increasing. We just don't know what the final numbers are. So we do expect to see that change when we come back and present at estimated actuals and adopted budget. And then you will see that in that yellow band, which represents our other local, there's a decrease in the out years. Again, that's largely due to Medi-Cal reimbursements not being booked or projected out. So that funding as it comes in, then that eventually we do expect to see an increase over time as those reimbursements come in. And then this slide just helps put into context, where all the revenue is coming from. As you see, about 72% of the district's funding source comes from LCFF, which is represented in the blue at 72%. And if you go clockwise, you'll see our federal in purple makes up about 5%, other state 17%, and then other local is at 6%. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Ron.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we're going to go over some numbers related to special education, and I want to make a statement before we get into these slides, and it's a very important statement. So what we're going to be showing you are a lot of numbers about special education, and this is not an editorial on anything related to Santa Ana special education or really any other school districts. What this is pointing out that the federal and state government simply do not fund special education adequately. And for Santa Ana in particular, fully 3/4 of the expenditures are not covered by the money we receive from the state and federal government. So we have to contribute, and the contribution is going from the unrestricted general fund to the restricted general fund. And Jennifer, talked about that distinction before. So it's really important as we think about special education that we understand that there is this contribution that we're making in order to make sure that we're fully funding the programs that our students need. The slide that you're looking at here is information related to all of Orange County. So this is every school district in Orange County with what they are contributing collectively to special education. So going way back to 2002-3, you could see that it was only about 153 million. Now or last year, 24-25, it's approaching $1.2 billion. So collectively, all the districts in Orange County contributed about $1.2 billion to special education, which is about 16.1% of their unrestricted non-special education budget. Let's remember that 16.1% number because I'm going to come back to it later. Now let's look at Santa Ana in particular. So what this slide is looking at, and we're in red, this is our student with disability percentage, and it's comparing our student with disability percentages to the same percentage for the state average and the county average. So what you see, just looking at our numbers, they were just going up incrementally. And then starting in 23-24, they started to go up about 1% every year. And then going into this year, it went up about 1.5 percentage from 16.9% to 18.4%. Now, the numbers for the state and county averages are also going up, but they're not going up by anywhere nearly as much. And that gap between the red line and the purple and the blue lines is getting wider and wider as our student with disability percentage goes up significantly, and there's only incremental increases on the county and state. Now, looking at individual districts, the way this slide works, on the very left, you have Santa Ana Unified with our unduplicated, with our student with disability percentage of 16.9%. That's the percentage last year. The state average, 14.2%. That's more than 2.5 percentage points lower than us. And then the county average of 13.7%, more than 3 percentage points lower than us. And then you see individual districts. So you see some of the bigger districts in Orange County like Irvine, Garden Grove, and Capistrano, and then also a couple of our neighboring districts, Orange and Tustin. And you can see that our percentage is larger than all of those districts. And if you expand it outside of Orange County to other large districts throughout the state, you're seeing the same thing. Our percentage significantly larger than those districts. And you actually have to go all the way to the right side of the chart to San Diego and Oakland to find districts that have incrementally higher percentages than we do. Looking at charter schools, and these are all charter schools located in the city of Santa Ana, you could see the same numbers on the left, our numbers and state average and county average. And then you have OSHA, which is a student with disability percentage of 5.8%. That is less than 1/3 of our percentage. And then you've got a lot of other charter schools that, although it's larger than OSHA's percentages, they're still significantly smaller than ours. And once again, it's not till you get to the right side of that chart, a couple of charters, Magnolia Science and Ednovate, where you see percentages that are larger than ours. So how does this affect us financially? Well, I talked about contribution earlier, And what you're seeing here is the actual contribution. So this is the raw dollars. This is the actual dollars that the unrestricted general fund is contributing to the restricted general fund so that we can cover special education. Once again, this is not what we actually spent on special education. So looking at the very right, which is last year, we contributed $148.6 million to our special education program. The actual expenditure was more than 200 million. So 200 million expenditures, the state and federal government covered about 50 million, and the unrestricted general fund had to make up the rest. That represents about a 19.1 contribution percentage. And if you recall, the county average is 16.1. So our contribution percentage is 3 percentage points higher than the county average. It's really important to understand this because this has a really big impact on our budget. I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer.
Okay, so now we're going to, earlier we talked about our revenue. Now we're going to talk about our expenditures. And again, we're going to be looking at that, comparing the first interim and second interim. So those two columns that are representing that red arrow. And starting with salaries and benefits, you can see that first expenditure being certificated salaries. There is about a $6 million increase there from first interim to second interim, about 1.9% variance. And that's largely due to extra duty that came in. We had Title I carryover. And so we saw some of that. That's a large portion of what's happening there. Classified salaries, you do see an increase from first to second interim. And that's two things that are happening with regards to classified salaries. We have seen an increase in paraprofessionals. And then we had a salary schedule adjustment that the board took action on a few board meetings ago. And this was related to a CalPERS compliance fix. And so that's what's happening there with regards to employee benefits. We stay pretty stable. In looking at the salaries and benefits in the multi-year here, again, everything to the left being actuals from prior years and everything to the right being current year and 2 out years as projections. You can see that's certificated and classified, both the blue representing certificated salaries, classified being the purple. You'll see incremental decreases in the out years due to really reviewing and being mindful of, do we need to fill vacancies? And then you'll see in green, which represents the benefits, that those decrease as salaries decrease in the out years. So looking at expenditures at supplies, services, and capital, again, we're looking at that first interim to second interim comparison. This will probably be the one time I reference the unaudited actual numbers at second column. For supplies, you do see a decrease from first interim to second interim, and that really is largely in part due to our diligence of our approvers who are reviewing all of our purchase requisitions, enforcing established guidance, purchasing guidance, and really asking those key questions. Do we need this, and do we need this now? There is still continued efforts that are happening around supplies with our budget committees. Unaudited actuals, we ended at 23 million. We're projected at 33 million this year. So there is still some work to be done with regards to supplies. You'll see for services from first interim to second interim, there is an increase of about $15 million. And that's really largely due to an increase in an emergence contract, which is one of our temporary staffing agencies that several departments use to ensure we have adequate services and supervision. And then also we're seeing increased costs in utilities. And then looking at capital, we are looking at an increase there as well, a little over $3 million. And that's due to the need to purchase vehicles and then some capital projects due to just extreme need and system failure. By way of example, we had two massive plumbing issues at a school site and at central office, which resulted just in those two projects alone, equating about $500,000. In looking at the operational cost in the multi-year, you can see books and supplies, again, projections on the right in current year and out years. Books and supplies is representative in blue, our services in purple, and then our capital outlay is in green. And you'll see we start to see decreases in the out years. And this is really reflecting the district taking a more conservative approach to spending as we plan for the future. And then looking at the expenditures as a whole, this slide here, this pie chart demonstrates that salaries and benefits are a vast majority of our budget at 81%. And if you start, we're starting with that, that blue sliver representing certificated salaries, representing 33%, and moving clockwise to the green, representing classified salaries at 17%, and keep moving to management at 5%, benefits at 26%, and then the rest of the budget representing 19%. And so this slide really looks at total revenue compared to total expenditures. And just to orient you, again, we do have actuals to the left, so prior years, and then our projections to the right of the red line. I do want to call out the green line represents our revenue, and the purple line represents expenditures. And during the pandemic years, you can see that revenue, that green line, was higher than our expenditures. And that was largely due to one-time funds coming in from both federal and state. And that was really just districts received that to support students during that time. And as those one-time funds began to expire, the district continued providing many of the programs and services that were put in place. And because of that, you start to see that in 23, 24, the revenue, the expenditures started to outpace the revenue. And that's where we start to see deficit spending occur. And the important thing to note is that the district has been actively working to reduce that gap. You can see that the deficit spending decreases significantly. So in 24, 25, we were at 146 million deficit spending. And now into current year, 25, 26, we are about 59 million. And that gap continues to get narrower and narrower in the 2 out years. And this slide is going to show the district's ending fund balance over time. I do need to orient you to this slide because the green and the purple don't represent the same things on this slide as they did in the previous slide. So this one really, the green represents our ending fund balance, our total ending fund balance, whereas the purple represents our ending fund balance for unrestricted funds. And so during the pandemic, or prior to the pandemic, actually, our ending fund balance, our unrestricted ending fund balance was represented 78% of the total ending fund balance. So in that 2018, 2019, far to the left, and that's considered healthy. And you can see as we got into the pandemic years, that really started to widen. And during the pandemic, our unrestricted ending fund balance represented 53% of the total. And so as you know, we look at our projections, we're getting closer and closer to that pre-pandemic levels. And so we're continuing to work on closing that gap as well. There is one other line on here that I do want to touch on, which is that red line that you see on the bottom right corner, and that represents our minimum required unrestricted reserves. So as a district, we are required to maintain 2% minimum reserves when our ADA is above 30,000. So you see that it's about 16 million, both in current year and in 26, 27. And then you'll notice that it jumps in 27, 28 to about 23, a little over 23 million. And that's a $7 million increase. That's because if you remember back to our assumptions, we are projecting at 27, 28 to dip below that 30,000 mark. And so what that means is the district will then be required to maintain a 3% minimum reserves. And I'm going to turn it over to Ron to close us out.
All right, thank you. So this chart shows other funds. So everything that we've talked about so far is general fund, Fund 1, but we do have some other funds for other things. And I do want to highlight a couple of things here. So first of all, Fund 9 is our charter school fund. That's for our dependent charter advanced learning academy. And you see that there really wasn't a lot of change between ending fund balance at first and second interim, but there was a contribution. So remember, we talked about a contribution for special education. Well, there could be contribution for other things also. And here we did have to contribute about $800,000 from general fund to Fund 9, and that's due to some of the operational challenges of this particular charter school. They operate two different campuses, so there's increased expenditures there, and we're definitely looking at solutions so that we will not have to continue to make those contributions. I also want to point out our cafeteria fund, Fund 13. At one point in time, there was some deficit spending, but with increased participation due to the great meals that they're doing from the Scratch Cooking Initiative, from the Dish Up Initiative, because of increased participation, they are no longer really deficit spending, so we don't have to worry about making a contribution to Fund 13. And then really quickly, I want to point out some of the facilities funds. We have Fund 21, which is our bond fund, and you do see some incremental decrease there in any fund balance. That's because we're spending bond funds on projects, investing in our facilities. On some of the other facilities funds, which are Fund 25, 35, and 40, you actually see some you see some increases. That is because this district does a great job of taking advantage of state matching funds. These funds are where those matching funds flow into. So we're doing a great job, and that's going to help us do a lot of great things for our facilities. I'm going to come back to facilities in a little bit, but first I just want to bring us back to our timeline. Next steps for the budget timeline coming up in May, we're going to have the governor's May revision. So the governor did do his proposed budget back in January. That will be revised according to the taxes that they're seeing through the tax deadline of April 15th. And if revenues are up, then there will be adjustments that we see in the May revision. Then in June, that'll be the last time that we do any estimations or projections on our 25-26 budget. So we'll do estimated actuals in June at the same time that we're developing the 26-27 budget. And of course, we have all of our meetings with our partners throughout the city. Every time that we see new information, whether it be unaudited actuals or first interim or second interim, after we present to the board, we're sharing that information with our labor partners, and we'll be doing that this Friday. We share information with our leadership team, and we share information with you, the community, so that we could all be on the same page and understand what the district is facing. So I want to come back to facilities, and it's interesting. We talked about facilities, and we're also talking about, our structural deficit. So we're going to put a scenario out, and then we're going to get into our breakout groups and discuss the scenario. So the scenario is that it's 2029. The district realizes that school facilities are not just buildings, they carry memory, identity, pride, and community meaning. But at the same time, empty seats and underused facilities create financial pressures. So the challenge that we're going to give to you in the breakout groups is, what is your recommendation on how the district should think about the future of its campuses, of its facilities, as both educational facilities and community assets? So with that being said, I am going to allow Lisa and others to break out everybody into your groups.
And in 1 second, we're going to be sending everyone in. Facilitators, you already know who you are, and note takers. We've assigned everybody rooms, so everyone will automatically be sent to their room when we open all the rooms, okay? If anybody needs a change in room, we do have one room that's for just English speakers, and that's room 1. So please let me know if you do need me. You can raise your hand, and I could try to unmute you to make sure I get you into room 1 where it's going to be all in English. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and send everyone off to their rooms. And since the presentation went relatively fast, everyone, I am going to I'm going to give them, there's only a few people in each room, so I'm going to give them about 10 minutes and then I'll broadcast that we're going to be coming back. Okay? Thank you. And if you're co-hosts, and hopefully all of you are made co-hosts, then you'll be able to go in and out of any room. Jeremy, I don't know if you are if we made you a co-host.
I think so. So I can join in.
Okay.
That's great.
Perfect. Thank you. And I did combine some rooms, just so everybody knows. We had staff, extra staff. Thank you.
Terrific.
I sent people home. Wait. Got it. Let me get everybody.
Hi, Rocio. We are currently in breakout rooms. Would you like to be sent to an English or Spanish speaking breakout room?
Um, I understand both, so whatever you have, it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Is there a preference, English or Spanish?
English is fine.
Okay, I'll send you to the English room.
Thank you.
Hi, iPhone who just logged in. We're currently in a Zoom meeting. So, would you like me to send you to a breakout room in English or Spanish? Maribel, do you need to get back into your room? Maribel, ¿necesita ayuda, para irse detrás al cuarto? Okay. Ay, Lorena, ahorita estamos en los cuartos chiquitos, pero se me hace que ya mero van a regresar para atrás al main room.
Ok, sí,
Pero
sorry, me metí
te
ya
puedo,
tarde.
no, no se preocupe. Te puedo mandar un breakout room por lo mientras, aunque sea agarrar lo último.
Sí, está bien, como
Ok.
gustes. Sí, thank you.
Okay, everyone's going to be coming back. We gave everyone about 30 seconds. Thank you, everyone, for sharing some your wonderful ideas. And as we welcome you back into the room, we're going to have facilitators of rooms share out some of what was shared in those rooms. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen, Ron, if that's okay. And I'm going to just share this is room 1. And Gabriela, do you want to share out some of the things that your room talked about? Or no, sorry, not Gabby. It's Vanessa. Room 1.
I was in room 2, Miss Solomon.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mija. Does anyone from room 1 want to share out?
Yeah, I can share.
Thank you, Maria.
So in our group, it was talked about merging schools who are smaller. Also merging other schools like continuation schools like Chavez, Lauren Grisette, doing more open space area for the city and the whole school district to be using, having a like a place for as a community center with clinics and bridging them to filling the gaps needed. For example, having like clinics, dental clinics, medical, food, housing, basically having a space for all the community partners that we already work with. And then as well, using that space to have some of our students do internships with them so that at the same time that we're providing the space for our community partners, our students can take advantage of that opportunity and learn from them. Also creating like sports center for students to use them to practice, selling the properties for housing, using them for creating a partnership with the city to use the spaces for adequate or appropriate functions. Also, another option was to have more TK through 8 and more 6 through 12 schools, and merging some of the schools together as well.
Thank you, Maria, for all your ideas, and thank you to everyone in that group. Group 2. And I know this was a smaller group, Vane.
I could share if,
Okay, thanks, Cynthia.
okay, let me just, so, our parent, I know that, some of our parents were having, technical difficulties unmuting themselves, but we did get, a parent, to share, and she said, that their school is remodeling, so it is a Monroe parent. She's really excited about the partnership with UCI, and she's excited to see what that brings, maybe more programs for the students. She would really like a designated space for the students where they can go and maybe decompress, take a quick break, a room where it has something that they can do that's more like hands-on. I know that she also said security is very, very important to her. And she would like maybe some way of, now we only have one point of entry. Maybe the students and the staff having like a kind of like they do at Disney where you wave the wristband, maybe not a wristband, maybe like a badge, and every child having a badge on them to make sure that we're identifying and giving the right student to the right adult. And so more, more structures at the school sites.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Mhm.
And then room 4.
All right. So for us, it would be amazing to see a staff facility for PDs with plenty of parking for all staff. Another one was sharing spaces with partners, for example, community medical clinics, and having a food pantry for families to go to, and to keep, all the basic need stuff that we do get from different places. For nutrition services to have a community center for family food tasting events and other PD needs. CTE having their own facility, and that Lathrop can be the main building for FACE department, for FACE liaisons to have parent meetings, and all of that stuff.
Thank you. And the last room is room 5.
Hi, so in our group, we had great ideas. So one of the parents was saying, let me just screen, said to have designated space, especially for parent meetings. Sometimes the wellness centers or other areas in the schools are busy, so having more of a center space for parents to have their own meetings. A space for SPED students who can be there during lunch or their break. For example, students can read a book, de-escalate, or decompress. They also said like a room for like staff, for like, there's younger staff that they can have a room where they can lactate and have that personal space for them. Have for the TK Kinder, have a designated bathroom more closer to them or like within the classrooms, just because they are sometimes farther away from the classroom. It's for safety purposes. The other one said asegurar el perímetro frontal para tener acceso fácil, vallar o cerca de las áreas principales enfrente de las escuelas. Have more like security base on front, like in front of the school area. Sembrar más árboles para tener sombra, más áreas verdes, more trees, more shades for our students.
And definitely more green space as well. Thank you. And then we wanted to see if anybody, and I don't know what this is, but someone might be sharing that. It's not me. I unshared. I don't know what that is. So we are going to be we've written down all of your ideas and we're going to be gathering them together to share them out. Les queremos agradecer por todas sus ideas. Vamos a traer todo junto y también vamos a poder después revisar todas sus ideas y las ideas que nos dieron. So thank you very much for all of your participation. Gracias por su participación. Ron, was there anything else that you wanted for us to share out, or would you like to say a few final words?
Just thank you. Those were great ideas, great suggestions. We'll combine those with the suggestions that we got from the in-person town hall earlier today, and that's going to inform future conversations. So always appreciate the community's input on important matters. So thank you for your time tonight.
Gracias a todos por todo su tiempo. Estamos bien, bien agradecidos. Gracias por sus ideas, que los vamos a combinar con también las ideas de que tuvimos hoy en la mañana. Estamos bien agradecidos por que estuvieron aquí con nosotros este tiempo en la tardecita y que tengan muy buenas noches. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Yes, someone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lupe. Thanks, everyone, for joining. feel like I never see you, Lupe, and we're like 2 offices away.
You're always busy.
I know, dude, we are. Nice seeing you. Thank you, everyone. Gracias a
And
todos.
everybody.